Hey everyone, Paul Reilly here, author of Selling Through Tough Times. The worst sales advice that I ever received was actually from a sales manager I used to work with. So he was in town visiting me. We were going to our first appointment, and he said to me, "What? We're actually going to a prospect? We're not going to see our existing customers. Why are we going to a prospect?" And he went into this whole tirade on how this is not the best use of his time. Why should he go see a prospect? We should go see existing customers. And that's something that always stuck with me. I thought, who is this guy? How did he get into this position when he is discouraging a salesperson from going to see prospects? It was unbelievable.
Paul, do you think he was discouraging you, or do you from seeing prospects, or do you think he just was afraid of ever talking to a real prospect and might have to do some work? I mean, what do you think, man?
Well, based on how the sales call went, I think maybe he wasn't well versed on how to talk to prospects, Phil. I mean, that's what I'm thinking in hindsight, all right?
That's terrible, man. So, was that like your first sales job, or how long ago was that, man?
Yeah, it was my very first sales job out of college. I wanna be careful to divulge too much information, but I was selling in a, heavily commoditized industry, and the way, I was, compensated as a salesperson was really based on new business. I only got paid for customers after, we got paid the first 4 years that they were customers, then after that, you were cut off. So, you were constantly incentivized to go out there and find brand new business. You got compensated better for new business. So it, I'll tell you, it was really shocking though, for sure.
Wow, wow, that's awful, man. That's awful. But I bet though that you learned so much from that. Maybe any of that in the book,
You know,
any of that overcome time in the book.
absolutely. That was one of the things I asked myself. First of all, what qualifies me to write a book on selling through tough times? And one thing we learn is that everyone faces tough times to varying degrees, and they're all relative. So we really shouldn't compare our tough times to that of other people. But I've sold through tough times. I sold in the heavily commoditized propane industry, which is notoriously price sensitive. I sold tools and fasteners during the Great Recession. I sold medical equipment during one of the most uncertain times in the healthcare industry. So yeah, tough times are that's part of my sales profession, my sales career before getting into the speaking and training business.
Cool. That's good, man. Cool. So, an actual practitioner, not just an expert, which I
That's
always
right.
love, right? I think that is important, right? Because theory is great, but action is better.
Hmm.
At least, especially when it comes to sales, anyway. I think you can research other stuff, but I think sales is one of those things. If you've never sold, it's very hard to say that, yes, I'm going to teach my sales team how to do this because, yeah, man, like if I gave them a book that was all theory, they'd be like, come on, are you kidding me, man? That's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree 100%. You got to carry the bag. You've got to, you really have to put yourself in the position of the people you're trying to help, and you have to be a practitioner, especially with sales.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, the book is fantastic, right? Selling through tough times. We're going to talk about this. And one of the things that stood out to me here is the idea of value. Buyers need sellers who create value. You say that clearly. And then in chapter 3, right, you say price is to cost as utility is to impact. And I thought that was really interesting. So,
Mhm.
how is that different in these tough times that we're in now than when we're in super like go, go, go time?
Sure. No, Phil, that's a great question. And just to expand on that a little bit, so I compare price to cost as utility is to impact. So what we're talking about there is the value formula. Um, so price is simple. It's what the buyer pays, but cost is what they really sacrifice: time, energy, effort, labor savings, maintenance. All these other factors. Utility is what your product or service does, but impact is how it really affects the buyer, the outcome that is generated, what they gain from experiencing your value added solution. So that value formula, it doesn't change during tough times, but how customers define value will change. All right, because customers define value, and their definition is the only one that matters. But the times that they experience, the tough times they experience, will help define the customer in some way. So their definition of value will change, what they look for, what's important to them. And when we think about how it does change, a few things come to mind. Number one, they are going to be more open to cost cutting ideas. That's one of the hidden opportunities of tough times. During tough times, your customers, they become more focused on any and all ways that you can help reduce their overall cost. Many of the sales organizations that I work with, their value proposition is linked to that idea of reducing costs. So it truly creates an opportunity for tough times. So that's just one way in how customers redefine value. They also look for stability. They look for certainty. They want to partner with companies that have been through tough times in the past. Phil, I'll give you an example of this. Um, I was working with the sales team, and one of the salespeople asked a great question. The question was, does our customer really care that we've been in business for 90 years? It was a great question, a great question. And it wasn't a salesperson challenging or anything. They were really curious. And I said, you know what? During tough times, that does matter. Companies want to partner with other companies that have been through tough times in the past and that have experienced them. So that's just a couple thoughts on how customers will redefine value.
Yeah, that's so interesting. When I read that in the book, that longevity in tough times is even more important, right? It's the we've been through this, hopefully, just like your prospect has, just like your customer will be, as opposed to, well, yeah, we're fresh and new and innovative. And I do think stability is something that they absolutely crave when things are harder, right? The whole nobody gets fired for hiring IBM. I
Mhm.
mean, I've heard that for years and years. So talk to me a little bit more about that, right? Because I do think that's important. How do we sell with longevity and make it about our customer instead of saying, well, I'm 137 years old and therefore I'm valuable to you?
Right. That's a great question, and I think to keep it customer focused, we certainly need to focus on their needs, what's important to them, and asking the right questions, generating a good customer focused discussion is key. I think more than anything, we demonstrate our stability in the way we carry ourselves as salespeople. All right, Phil, I'll give you an example. All right, so you and I, speakers, we crisscross the country, training and doing all that. We're on a lot of airplanes, all right? We're getting on them again. I remember I was on this flight to New Orleans, all right? And, the captain came out before the flight, and he said, "Hey, just to give everyone a heads up, there's a little weather in the area. We're probably gonna hit a few bumps on the way up into our final, into we get to cruising altitude and all that." Um, he said, "But don't worry, we wouldn't take off unless it was completely safe." Now, what made that such a powerful statement and event is not that he said those words, it was the fact that he had a lot of gray hair saying those words. It was his experience,
Mm.
his calmness, how he was able to ease everyone's concern. So it was the way he showed that. And what's interesting, all right, on the way back, there was still a pretty bumpy flight on the way home, and they didn't make an announcement before the flight, but afterwards. All right, afterwards, they actually said, "We just wanted to thank everyone and also congratulate Captain so and so on their very first solo flight as a captain here with our airline." And so, when you have the experience, you brag about it before the tough times, but when someone was inexperienced in this case, they ended up, not telling us until after the flight was over. So it was pretty funny, actually.
Ooh, so that's interesting, right? So
Mhm.
almost not saying anything can sometimes, if you're confident, can overcome that lack of experience, huh?
Well, I was just kind of speaking off the cuff there a little bit. I think when salespeople may not have that experience, what they can do is they can leverage the experience of their company. They can leverage the experience of their team, their technical people, and really everyone in between there. So they can rely and lean on that experience that is there with the company.
Love that. Yeah, the royal we for the
Yeah.
experience. We have sold thousands of these and we have been around for 147 years or whatever. I think that's a great way to do that and that's a great way to add value by offering some sense of security to your
Mhm.
buyer. So I really dig that, man. That's important and a good lesson for folks. So when we think about that, though, one of the things that I think salespeople often overlook, and you talk about it in the book, is that they are the ultimate value differentiator. And I think
Mhm.
they miss that, right? They think that often, oh, well, it is my company or it's my product. But now more than ever, with a commoditized, whatever offering that you have, a lot
Mhm.
of times it is the salesperson. So can you dive into that a little bit more and talk about the value of a good sales rep?
Sure, absolutely. And what's interesting, and I see this when I work with organizations that have truly unique products that really they're noticeably better than the competition, or it's something unique to them. That can make a lazy salesperson sometimes because they rely too much on the product side of it. They forget that as the salesperson, they represent a significant amount of the value. Here's what our research shows. When we surveyed a group of 600 customers as part of a top achievers study that we put together, the number one attribute that customers expect from salespeople is knowledgeable expertise. In fact, in our study, knowledgeable expertise ranked higher than trustworthiness, right? So, you think about that. I know Roosevelt said people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, not for salespeople. In our case, customers, they need your knowledgeable expertise. So we translate that into personal value. That means as salespeople, we need to be a true student of our profession. We need to make sure we're dedicating time to understanding our products and services. Obviously, that's elementary level product knowledge in that. But we need to know the industry. We need to know our customers. I was working with a sales team just yesterday. We talked about knowledgeable expertise, and one salesperson demonstrated this expertise by telling his customer how they're supposed to buy this product, by showing them what other departments in the process that needs to go through because the company was so big they were unaware of their own processes and how things work. That salesperson knew their company better than the actual decision maker. So that's part of how we bring expertise is we're able to help our customers make better buying decisions. We're able to solve their problems. We're able to uncover problems they didn't even know that they had, and we provide the solution that goes along with it.
Hmm. So how do we do that though? How do we help add that level of, okay, well, normally in a, most of my customers in an organization like yours might need IT and legal and compliance and procurement involved without introducing complexity that might slow a deal down.
Yeah, complexity is an interesting thing because decision making can be complex depending on the organization, depending on the solution. And in some ways, we do want to try to simplify the process, but when it comes to uncovering our customers' needs, we do want them to understand the complexity of their needs in some regards. And why we do that is it gives them a realistic picture of what they're dealing with, but also it opens them up to your value added solution, right? The more complex your needs, you need a special customized solution and you need a salesperson that understands how to navigate that process with them. Um, Back to your point though, when you do have to incorporate multiple decision makers, that can complicate things. And, in selling through tough times, what you'll notice is that people become less certain, right? They're fearful. The future doesn't look as bright, and not only that, when that happens, people are terrified of making the wrong decision. Nobody wants a target on their back. So here's what's going to happen: people are going to incorporate more decision makers so that they can ensure they're making a popular decision that everybody is on board with. So that can complicate things. What I would suggest for salespeople is when you are working with a group of decision makers, you need to understand the overall objectives that are going to guide everyone's decision making, but you need to know the individuals and how this decision is personally going to impact them. You need to understand what's important to them, what's at stake. And when you're with those decision makers individually, you need to sell to their individual needs. But when you're in the group setting, when you bring everyone together, you need to focus on the overall group objectives while gaining that individual buy-in. And then what will happen that, a natural group think will begin to take over as more people are starting to buy in, you're going to generate some momentum. It may add a little bit of time, but Phil, that's naturally going to happen as a result of tough times anyway. Many deals will get stalled out. They're going to take a little bit longer. People are going to take a wait and see approach. So it's critical to establish urgency.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And it's the urgency that benefits the customer, not urgency because the salesperson needs to make their number for the month or the
Right.
organization needs to make their quarter. Because, that's often the urgency that I see
Right.
by default, right? An inexperienced salesperson that's never been through tough times is going to sell to their urgency, right?
Mhm.
Oh, well, we're at the 27th of the month. And, if you buy in the next 3 days, and
Yeah.
what the customer really hears is, well, we're 20% overpriced. So
Mhm.
therefore, I'm probably not going to still make my decision, but you're still going to give me that discount. Is that what you're hearing too, Paul?
Yeah, there is a natural pressure that we feel as salespeople, and also customers will put this pressure on you. There's a reason why customers will call their salespeople the last 2 days of the month or the last few days of the quarter and ask them, "Hey, so how's your quarter going?" "Oh, it's been a tough one." "Oh, well, I'd love to help you out. I'd be able to push this through. Can you cut me a break?" They're gonna make you feel the pressure. They're playing the game, right? And why wouldn't they? Their experience has taught them if they lean on salespeople, they can get a discount. But there's a better way to respond. There's a better way to approach the urgency piece, and it's really by emphasizing the pressure points that customers are experiencing. And we do it in a positive way, not to apply a lot of heavy-handed persuasion, but we have to help our customers get out of their own way sometimes to make better long-range decisions. And you as the value-added salesperson, you as that tough timer, you can help do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, talking about tough times, Paul, you
Mhm.
you have some great advice that you gave that's going to lead us right into the next question that I've got for you. Can you share? Normally, we just share one or the other, either best or worst, but you had some great advice as well that you got. So share that, please.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, here's the phrase, "You can always get better," right? You can always get better. Pretty obvious statement, right? But I gotta explain the context of that. So, actually, this is when I was working with the same company. However, right out of college, I got a chance to spend a week with our company's top salesperson. His name was Kevin. Kevin would win President's Club, like, every year. And so I got a chance to spend a week with him. It was like getting an MBA in sales, watching him, learning from him, seeing the questions that he would ask, and watching him interact with customers. It was incredible. But what I learned the most happened at the end of the week. All right. So here we are. I'm getting ready to leave Kansas City. And Kevin, he asked me before, he goes, "Paul, before you head out, I just got one question for you. How can I get better?" And here I am, a 22-year-old kid, right? A snot-nosed kid, college grad, my first professional sales job. And I hear the best salesperson at our company ask me, "How can I get better?" And I said, "Kevin, man, I got nothing for you. You're the best. You're the best." And he looked at me and he said, Paul, you can always get better. Remember that." And so I held on to that advice, and it's so critical because it wasn't the words that were so powerful, but it was who said it, right? Our top salesperson, "You can always get better." And from that point on, I choose to take the attitude of the beginner in all things to learn and really find a way to get better.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, that speaks to your positive mental programming here that you talk about in the book. The
Yeah.
PMP, very different than a project management certificate that some get, right? Those project management professionals are positive mental programming. You talk
Yeah.
about mental resilience and attitude in the internal game. So I got to ask you first before we get into that,
Mhm.
how do we find that? How do we get that when we aren't feeling it, man? I mean, sometimes we're just beat down.
Yeah.
And so how do we gin that back up? And then let's talk about your program here because I got to tell you, man, your tough timer challenge is awesome. So we're definitely going to get into that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Phil, it's important when you're facing especially tough moments in sales, look at the facts. Take the emotion out of it. And I talk about this in the book, and I share an example of a salesperson who had confided in me, and they were thinking about leaving the sales profession. All right, because he was having a very tough time, and he was struggling, just absolutely struggling. And I said to him, I go, "You know what? Let's do an exercise here. All right. I want you to pretend that you are a lawyer." All right. That didn't make him feel any better, by the way. I said, uh,
No.
yeah, I go, I want you to pretend you're a lawyer. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to argue the case that you are a good salesperson. All right. I'm the judge and the jury. What facts do you have to support that claim? And so he started sharing all of these examples of how he won awards for the number one salesperson when you're, prospecting effort. He got awards for that. People talk to him when they need help in sales. And so the salesperson gave me all of these facts supporting the claim that they're a good salesperson. I said, look, you're not only a good salesperson, you're an award winning salesperson who is facing a tough time. Look at the facts that will help you stay strong as you go through whatever it is you're going through. And the salesperson was in a slump, stuck it out, ended up having a pretty darn good year. All right. So that it's important to look at the facts because that helps take the emotion out of it, as you mentioned.
Wow. I like that. I like that. Yeah. I call that reporting the news, right? Just focus on, just report
Yeah.
the news. Here we
Yeah.
go, right? Like this is what happened, 10 o'clock. This is what happened last quarter. This is what's happened in my career. I really, that resonates with me a lot. So let's talk a little more about that before we move into the challenge here and the internal game, right? Of having attitude. Because one of the things that I enjoy most about your book is there's a lot of focus on that. It's not
Mhm.
just, okay, so here's 7 ways to close somebody and here's 13 ways to prospect, right? This is really
Yeah.
helping us between the ears, which I think for a lot of salespeople, that's where they struggle the most. Not because they're not smart, but because sometimes they get in their own head, much like a good sports person. So
Yeah.
take us into that. How do we develop that mindset? How do we get to that attitude so that we can make that happen, Paul?
Sure, absolutely. There are several things we can do. One of which is to know where we're currently at. Monitor your self-talk. If you want to predict the future, Phil, listen to how you talk to yourself, and that's going to give you a strong indicator. And as you listen to your self-talk, there's going to be things maybe you don't like. Maybe you have a little head trash going on. You know, Putting pen to paper and just writing out some of the negative thoughts, it acts as a vehicle to vacate that negativity from your mind. Get it on paper, get it out of there, throw it away, take out the mental trash, right, so to speak. The other piece here is to monitor your response to adversity. I group people into three categories when it comes to mental resilience and adversity. All right, you've got the first group, right? They experience any sort of adversity. A broken shoelace, they lose a sale, and it's like they give up right away. They're just they're done. It's a nightmare for them, and they just give up. All right, I doubt many people listening to our show today fall into that category. Then on the other extreme, you've got people who experience adversity and they push through. It's almost like that adversity creates momentum for them in some ways. They just push right through. All right. I'm sure we got people listening today on that. But then there's the group in the middle. And this is where most people fall. They face adversity, whether mild or major. They sit around, they complain about it, they stew over it, they feel sorry for themselves, they pause, and then eventually they move past it. So my thought is, if you're going to move past it, why not do it immediately? You know you're going to, so don't waste time. Don't waste the energy and the effort. And so there's an exercise you can do that will help with this. And it's not the tough timer challenge. It's even simpler than that. What you can do, Phil, is over the next couple weeks, or maybe just the next week, we'll start simple. Start tracking your immediate response to any form of adversity that day. Let's say you lose a sale. Okay. What is your immediate response to that adverse moment? Let's say your flight got canceled. What is your immediate response to that adverse moment? And that's going to be an indicator of your mental resilience, right? And the longer you pause and complain, the more work you need to do. All right. So I would track that immediate response to adversity. And as you become aware of it, there's going to be some self correction as well.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. That's simple and certainly doable. And I think that's a wonderful first step for folks to go as they're thinking, okay, well, I know how to sell. I can understand, right, the facts, but I'm
Mhm.
still kind of stuck. So I think that's a good way to help them get unstuck by tracking that immediate response and then working on that, right? Just speed it up a little bit until eventually it is almost like snapping your fingers, like, oh, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's move, right? Let's pivot. So yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. So Paul, I have to tell you, your daily mental flex and all of the tough timer challenge. I went through this and I still have work to do. I'm not perfect either, but I love that, man. I love the book. It's fantastic. So let's close out here. Let's talk about the tough timer challenge, because I think for a lot of folks, that's going to be what helps them the most. So talk to us about that, please.
Sure. So just to describe the Tough Timer Challenge, for 30 days, you have to complete the Daily Mental Flex, which is a collection of 6 mental exercises. And then also you have to plan every sales call. All right. That's the key, is you got to plan every sales call. And we have all this information on the Tough Timer website. Um, but to briefly explain the why behind it. Okay. When you think about salespeople during tough times, they don't experience as much progress. They struggle a little bit more, and salespeople need something to build them up, to fill them up. And that was the idea with the Tough Timer Challenge. All right. The first exercise is to express gratitude by journaling either a half page or a full page of what you're grateful for that day. The second exercise is continuous improvement. Take 15 minutes and spend it on a continuous improvement activity, right? Now, if you're already a continuous improvement practitioner, right? Spend an extra 15 minutes. All right. It's about doing a little bit more. Exercise 3, which is my favorite, self-discipline. Every day, I know there are things you don't feel like doing, right? It could be making that prospecting call. It could be making a tough sales call. It could be, for me, it's going to be doing my taxes later today. I don't feel like doing that. But every time you do something you don't feel like doing, you build mental strength. So exercise 3 is about writing down that one thing you don't feel like doing and just knocking it off your list. Exercise 4 is about pruning and planting. During tough times, we are more vulnerable to negativity because we're surrounded by it. Determine one way you're going to either prune negativity or plant positivity in your life that day. Exercise 5, my close second favorite, is positive reframing. Every day you experience negative events, positively reframe it to focus on the outcomes. What's the positive outcome that will generate from this negative event? All right. Be aware of that. Think about it. And what you're doing is you're retraining your brain to almost immediately find the opportunity in each struggle. And then number 6 is about reducing friction. Reducing friction between today and your goals tomorrow. It's about helping yourself be more successful. Success doesn't have to be as hard as we make it. So what can you do today to set yourself up for success tomorrow? For example, if you're going to make 10 prospecting calls on Monday, right? Today's Friday. So let's say maybe you already prepare those 10 calls in advance. You plan them out. You do some research on the prospects. You have their number. You have the email addresses. You have everything you need to complete those calls ready to go on Monday. Set yourself up to make it easier on Monday. It's about removing those roadblocks, making success easier. So every day, completing it for 30 days, that's the Tough Timer Challenge. What you'll know is at the end of 30 days, you're going to be more grateful for sure. You're going to have a stronger foundation of mental resilience, and you're going to be more successful as a result of it. So that's the Tough Timer Challenge.
Wow. That's so awesome, Paul. Great stuff, man. So I love that all the resources that you have on your website, that you have on toughtimer.com. I went through some of them. Your mental flex template I thought was awesome. Your call planning is really great. There's so much there that folks can get. So if we want to get started though today, Paul, we want to start selling through tough times. Maybe we're new at this, or maybe we've been stuck for a little while. Other than obviously get a copy of the book, gang. I really encourage you. It's fantastic. It's not an easy read, but it's a helpful read. And I mean that in a positive way. So where do we get started, Paul? How should we start upon our journey through selling through tough times?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Phil. And it begins by having the right targets. So I would make sure that you are crystal clear on what is the profile for good business that you should be focused on. Then you got to get the message right. Get the message right. And Phil, the nice part here, and I was told not to do this because I was giving away too much value. I made chapter 13 in my book available for download. Or no, it's chapter 14, excuse me.
14.
The customer messaging chapter, where you learn how to craft the perfect message in tough times. In tough times, your customers are going to have more problems than ever before. You got to be able to understand that. You got to generate an outcome when you solve that problem for them, and you have to establish urgency. In this chapter, I explain exactly how to do it. And also I offer a template on how to do that. It's available on the downloads piece. So really, you don't even need to buy the book to get started. It'd be great if you did. I've got 3 daughters, so I've got 3 weddings to pay for. But if you just want to get started, check out the website, download the messaging chapter, and make sure you're focusing on the right targets first. And then when you couple that with the right message, you're well on your way.
There you go. Yeah, targets plus message equals success. So good stuff, Paul. Whether it's tough times or not, you certainly need this book. Helps your brain, helps your pocketbook, and certainly helps serve your customers even better. So go to toughtimer.com, get to know more about Paul Reilly, get a copy of the book, or at least go check out his downloads. There's lots of great stuff there, ways that you can sell more through tough times. Paul, thanks so much for sharing a lot of your insight today, man. I really appreciate you, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks.